So for tonight's meeting, we're going to continue where we left off last month, 2 weeks ago rather, going through the draft plan amendment text. Last 2 weeks ago, we had a very productive meeting, task force proceeding section by section, discussing whether they approved of the sections of the staff draft or whether they had recommendations to make. And on the agenda tonight, we'd had the adoption of the January 5th meeting minutes. We are still putting those together in addition to creating a comprehensive comment response matrix that includes both the comments that and recommendations the task force had made collectively at the previous meeting, as well as comments that we've heard from individual task force members and from members of the community that aren't on the task force. So at the next meeting in February, we'll be able to the task force will be able to address those meeting minutes, and we'll bring the comment response matrix to you all to discuss that as well. So with that being said, I believe we can just go ahead and move right on into the consideration of the draft text. I'd like to remind everybody to please mute your microphone if you are not the active speaker. This will cut down on echoes and background noise. For those members of the public that are attending that aren't on the task force, we will have time at the end of the meeting for a public Q&A comment period where you will be able to raise your hand and we can identify you and you'll be able to speak to, ask questions of staff or speak to the task force. So with that being said, David, I don't know how you want to proceed. I can go ahead and share my screen.
Excuse me, David?
That'd be fine, yes.
Yeah, hi, this is Paul.
Yes, Paul.
As I was very clear before, at the beginning of this meeting, I wanted to offer a motion relating to a communication I got from someone in the community, and I believe it's worth including in task force materials. It's the basis of an amendment, but it also reflects the views of a father in the community whose son in front of Longfellow Middle School was hit by a car and has been in a long process of recovery. And I sent that, there are two amendments that I'm planning to offer. And I asked him to look at the one and that he commented on it, he supported it. And independently of what this task force does, I do think that something that members of the community have been talking about should be included in materials sent to the Board of Supervisors. And for those who are actually listening, they can see it. I set up an Instagram account, and anyone on Instagram can go to unofficial WFC on Instagram, and that they can see a number of the materials relating to two issues that I find most important, one of which is the safety issue. So having said that, I would just like to read what he said. It was a brief message. I'd like to just have people understand exactly what's going on. And then I'm going to offer a motion that it be included in the minutes. And he said, and his name is withheld. I've separately sent to Supervisor Faust's office his name. So if there's any question that anyone has about his identity, they can contact Supervisor Faust or Ben Wiles. They know his identity. And he wrote to me, Paul, thanks for sending me the proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan. Reproduced at the end of his email. In January 2020, a car hit my son in front of Longfellow Middle School. He sustained substantial injuries. Fortunately, he is much better now, though his recovery is ongoing even now, more than a year after the accident. It is so important to ensure adequate pedestrian safety, especially in an area with a school zone, insufficient sidewalks and crosswalks, and increased auto and pedestrian traffic as a result of development. I strongly encourage the West Falls Church Task Force to advocate for improved pedestrian safety by adopting the language below, and for the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors to implement its suggestions on both sides of Great Falls Street. Adopting the language below is an important step towards protecting children like my son. No one should go through what my family has experienced in the last year. And this is the amendment. We'll be discussing it later. Development should improve pedestrian safety in the TDA, that's Transit Development Area, and adjacent areas, including the area between the West Falls Church Metro and Haycock Elementary School. The new development will generate increased traffic and tax revenues. Therefore, new development should not be authorized until a suitable amount is guaranteed for sidewalks, crosswalks, traffic lights, and other installations that will offset the increased danger from increased traffic and materially improve pedestrian safety for children required to walk to school, the elderly, the disabled, walkers to the metro, and others. So, we can discuss later on whether that amendment should be included or not, but this is a separate issue, and it's one where I believe that someone who has had this tragedy under circumstances that are very similar to what we see at Haycock Elementary, that his opinions should be included in the official record. And I would like to make a motion that with the materials sent by this task force to the Planning Commission and Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, that this gentleman's email be included.
First, I would like to ask Brian, do we need a motion for this? I mean, people can submit anything to the task force that they want to, right?
Well, not everything.
But we're just.
You go ahead. I defer to.
Well, I guess a few different things. I guess what the task force kind of makes a motion on ultimately on what it would like to send to the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission, to Supervisor Faust and to Commissioner Oldfelder. As part of the public hearing process for both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, anybody has the opportunity to relay written communication to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors.
So I'm not sure exactly where that leaves us here. If Paul's made a motion, if it's seconded, and if we vote yes, what happens to this? And what happens to it if we vote no?
Then it could be included as an attachment to recommendations that you send to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors.
But does it have to be attached to recommendations? We don't know yet how we're going to recommend on actual provision of sidewalks or whether that's going to be a requirement. In other words, I don't care if we attach a letter, but it's sort of it's sort of just hanging out there unless it's accompanied by a change, right?
No, I'm sorry. I don't think it is. It's not offered even as I'm separately going to discuss that as an amendment. This is being offered as an opinion from someone important in the community. And I think the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors are both intelligent enough to figure that out.
Right. So Brian, if we vote to do this, then it goes in what, the task force record, or are you making a motion that Paul, is your motion to simply, if you say this is part of the task force record, what are you implying will happen to it? I mean, a lot of things are in the task force record. We've had statements of yours and of other people, Lemon Road Civic Association, all that's in the task force record. And nobody needed a motion to do that. So I'm trying to figure out what that motion actually does. What happens to this letter other than being in the record and sitting in our piles of papers?
Well, it's a statement by the task force that regardless of what the task force ends up deciding to do with my amendment, that this is something worth consideration by the Planning Commission and the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. And that's just it. It's something a little more than normal comments that are just submitted by the community. It's a comment by a father whose son is more than a year later, still recovering from the damage that was done by a car. And that is something that I believe is important for the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors to consider. And it's something I certainly would hope that people, it's certainly something more important than anything I think I have to say for a family to have gone through that. And it's something I think that this task force should indicate is worthwhile for the Board of Supervisors to review. I mean, it's as simple as that. At least seven of the members of this task force live in areas that are zoned for Haycock Elementary.
Okay. Do we have a second, and can we have a discussion on that? We would need a second, I think, to have a discussion.
I'll second that.
And I'm sorry, who was that? Chris, was it you? Okay, thank you. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say about this? Well, I'm not seeing that anybody does.
Cheryl.
Yes, go ahead, Cheryl. Okay.
I have no problem with you submitting that letter, but I don't want it to come as a recommendation in any way from the task force, because we have no idea what we're going to be doing or why we're going to be doing it or how we're going to be doing it. So not a recommendation, just an attachment, just like the Lemon Road letter.
The recommendation, Cheryl, will come when the amendment is offered. This is just simply saying that someone who is zoned for the same middle school that people from the Gates are zoned for has this opinion, and that it's worth the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors to review it.
But that's not a recommendation. It doesn't have to be.
I'm not saying it's a recommendation. I'm saying it's something worthy of review.
I would say if it's the same as the Lemon Road letter and the same as other letters.
It's not the same as the other letter because it's not subject to a motion which has been seconded. Look, if you want to vote against it, that's you can vote against it, and the people in the Gates can know that someone is voting against it for the exact school for which they are zoned.
Paul, somebody may not be voting against it for that reason. They may be voting against it because they don't think that this should come from the task force, when you yourself could simply submit it yourself. What you say it's not a recommendation. Look, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, and here we are spending all this time on this, and there isn't anybody on this call who isn't sympathizing with a father who has had that problem. I mean, I have kids. It could happen to mine. That is not the issue here. I mean, the issue is other things that have been submitted to the task force as part of the record, such as things that you have submitted, Lemon Road's letters and things like that, simply are part of the task force records. And as far as I know, unless somebody else sends them to the Planning Commission, they won't go to the Planning Commission. Correct, Brian? There's other things that have been submitted?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, David,
so you're asking for an exception to that, and the only problem that I have with it is, I think, similar to what Cheryl is saying, which is simply by sending the letter, it's like we're taking a position. Sure, they should. If the position is simply we should be concerned about pedestrian safety, then fine, sure, all right.
So
that's what you're saying.
So I have moved to send it. I have been clear that it's not a change to the amendment. It's not a change to comprehensive amendment. I believe that the people on the Planning Commission and the people in Fairfax County are intelligent enough to know exactly what it means. And Brian and Michelle are able to convey exactly what was said. And this is a public recording. So I view that as not being a concern.
Just for the record, my daughter went to Haycock and she graduated from Haycock. So I'm very comfortable and familiar with Haycock and its safety and very much in favor of it. But you're asking more than the task force, I think, is ready.
Well, then we can have a vote on it. If there's been a motion, it's been seconded. Let's just have a vote on it.
Okay, does anybody else have anything to say about this before we do? Nobody else has an opinion? Chris, you seconded it.
Yeah, I have an opinion.
You want us to debate, or what do you feel about it?
Sure. I have an opinion. I think we should show a little backbone and carry forth with Paul's recommendation, and not really some worry so much about what the task force's original mission is. This is an important issue. So, stand up for it.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, I'm not seeing anything, so we had better just vote for it. All right, so let me make sure I understand the motion, Paul. The motion is that the task force, this will be placed in the task force record and conveyed to the planning commission. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, that meaning the letter from this father.
Yes.
Okay, all right. All in favor of that motion, please, why don't we raise your hands here?
Can we do a roll call on this, please?
Is it really important to you that you
Yes.
specify who is against this?
Absolutely.
I think well, to tell you the truth, this is part of what's bothering me because it's like.
This is a public record.
All right. Okay. It's part of the public record, but I feel like we're trying to put people in the position of being bad guys.
I'm trying to, well, look, David, when have you ever heard of a public group voting on something without people being put on record as to what they voted for?
All right. Okay. Brian, do you have an opinion on how we do this?
No, if there's a motion to do a roll call vote, that's fine.
All right. Let's let me just go down the list then. I'll ask you one by one. Cheryl, aye or nay?
Nay, I'm opposed to doing something different with this letter.
Okay. All right, Chris?
Yay.
Nay.
Yay.
Affirmative. Okay.
Affirmative.
Okay. Holly? Are you here? Can you get on?
I'm not controlling it. Okay, I guess I'm on now. No, I'd rather just abstain. I don't think it's part of our discussion for this.
Okay.
And that point could be made separately and probably carry much more weight with supervisors.
Okay,
That's
Holly,
my
you would like,
opinion.
so that's not a nay, it's an abstention? Okay.
Because I'm not hard-hearted. I just think it's inappropriate for this
I don't think any
purpose.
of us are hard-hearted, actually.
Well, sometimes.
Well, not on something like this, probably. Hold on a second. Brian, I know you're getting this, but I want to write it down. Okay. Jennifer?
I also abstain. I don't think this is following the process as I understand it. And I agree with Holly. I think there is a forum for providing this information. And Paul, I do hope that that is pursued. This is important information to relay, but I don't think this is.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Linda, aye or nay, or do you want to abstain?
Nay,
Okay.
for pretty much the same reasons that was just mentioned.
Okay. Paul, I think I know, but why don't you officially?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Stephanie?
Abstain.
I think that leaves only me, and I am also going to say nay. So I think it's 3 nays, 3 abstentions, and 2 ayes. Is that correct?
That sounds about what it was to me.
Okay. Okay. Once again, I know this is recorded, and I just want everybody to understand. Everybody is sympathetic to this. It's a question of what the task force's proper role is in forwarding things to the Planning Commission. There's nothing preventing you from doing it, Paul. And I suppose when we're through with all this, if we want to revisit it and emphasize public safety, but I think it makes more sense for us to go through the plan first. And if there are any other things you want to convey to the Planning Commission when we're through going through the comp plan, and that'll probably be the next meeting, I think it would make sense to take a look at see if there's anything else you want to emphasize. Thank you. Okay. So now I think we need to proceed through the document if we're all ready to do that. So if you are, Brian, do you want to put it up, right? Okay.
Yeah. You should all be able to see it right now. I believe last time we left off on page 15, line 39.
It depends on what version you've got.
of the strike through version.
I think we left off at page 10, line 30.
David, can you hear me?
Yes.
Brenda's.
I've been having technical issues. This is Darren.
Hi,
I
Darren.
just wanted to, I wanted to go on the record as a no vote on that.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
thank you.
Yes, you're welcome, Darren. I'm glad you were able to get with us. You probably, first of all, are going to have to blow that up a little bit, Brian, I think, although I have a copy. But where I seem to remember we left off is we had gone through the 11 criteria. That had to do with transportation and recommendations for the transportation network. Yeah, wait a second. No, I think we're actually not even that far quite. You need to go back to the previous group of previous list, Brian. 10, page 10. Yeah, and I think where we stopped is we did all 11 of these, and then we did not even proceed to the following paragraph.
Yep, that's right.
So, I'll try to do what I did last time, and I'll try to also remind you all, we did have some rules about speaking and how long anybody could speak and for how long and how many chances. I don't know that I can repeat them. Somebody needs to be muted who's not, I think, unless it's an echo from me. I hope we don't, I think it worked pretty well last time without having to enforce that much, but everybody gets on each issue here one comment or question and gets to speak for about 2 or 3 minutes, and you can get a second question if everybody's gotten an opportunity. This next stuff, does anybody have any comments or questions about this paragraph that starts off the word road improvements? I think we could actually look at this whole thing together, probably. Let's see. Let's just look at that paragraph, and then we'll look at the list of 10 things.
David, we're on page 10, did you say?
Of the strikeout version, yeah, I believe we went through number 11, Paul.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then at that point, I remember you said yourself, let's not, it's getting close to the end, let's not go further. Let's do questions from people. And that's where I drew a line. I'm pretty sure that's as far as.
Right. I guess I'm using the non-strikeout version.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been using the strikeout one because we can see what the changes are. But I don't know what page it is on the, what page is it on the clean version, Paul, if you have that in front of you?
I don't have that up in front of me.
I think it's page 8 on the clean version.
Page which?
Right, because I have, my first amendment is under number 3 on page 8 of the clean version.
Okay, all right, okay. So anyway, that's where we are, at least on the marked up version. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this? Raise your hand or just speak up. All right, I don't think, I don't see any questions, although I think I would not mind a clarification, Brian, and you may have, or anybody who on staff who can answer this best, but you may have answered this, excuse me, when we had our one-on-one session. But what does this mean about exceeding the higher end of the range and all that kind of thing?
Hey, David, I can answer that. This is Tim from.
Sure, Tim, please, go ahead.
Yeah, so there are TDM guidelines. Fairfax County has those, and there's actually an updated web page on that for transportation demand management and toolkit for developers. That trip reduction goal for non-TICES development closer to a transit station, which this is, would be at the higher range, 45% of trips. So reducing that percentage of trips. So we're trying to hold to that number. And of course, if that adjusts in the future, this would go along with it. That's why we didn't state a specific number, if that makes sense.
Okay, I think so. Is everybody okay on that? Not too puzzled to approve it? All right, unless I see an objection, let's consider that long paragraph approved. Now we get to the development proposals within the TDA. And there are 10 of them. And here I know Paul has got something he wants to say. Let's just get through the first two first. Well, I don't know. How should we do this? Paul, yours are really going to apply simply to number 3, correct?
Yeah, under number 3, once again, people can find it in the on unofficial WFC. I'm going to be posting about this after the vote, and it is a specific amendment. Before we were talking about whether it was worth the task force saying that someone whose child was hurt, whether his opinions should get greater weight. Now, this is the specific amendment which I ask. And as I've pointed, at least 7 of the 9 of us are zoned, or live in communities that are zoned for Haycock Elementary. And it relates specifically to Haycock Elementary, but to others. I think anyone who has walked in the area, walked along Beacon and Kazemont, knows it's dangerous now. We don't need a study. We don't need to rely on a study to know it's dangerous now. All you have to do is walk at school time or at rush hour, especially when it's dark. And we know that there's going to be increased traffic, both pedestrian and vehicular. So I've read it before. I don't need to read it again. It's just simply a statement that recognizes something that everyone knows is true, that there's a danger, that this is going to increase the danger, and a part of that should be, a part of this process should be recognizing it. And, when someone's hit by a car, whether he's elderly and can't get out of the way, or a kid going to school, all this bureaucracy is going to seem very, very petty in retrospect. So that's the amendment I'd like to offer.
Okay. I suppose the procedure should be that before we discuss this, somebody needs to second this. Is there somebody willing to second this amendment on the task force?
I'll second it. This is Christopher.
Chris, is that Chris? Okay, thank you. All right, let's have a discussion on this. And who has got something to say about this?
I have no idea what the amendment is. Can someone read it to me? Specific words, specific.
Yes, you have. I emailed it right before, but I emailed it several days ago. I just read it again, but I'll reread it again. Development should improve pedestrian safety in the TDA and adjacent areas, including the area between West Falls Church Metro and Haycock Elementary School. The new development will generate increased traffic and tax revenues. Therefore, new development should not be authorized until a suitable amount is guaranteed for sidewalks, crosswalks, traffic lights, and other installations that will offset the increased danger from increased traffic and materially improve pedestrian safety for children required to walk to school, the elderly, the disabled, walkers to the metro, and others.
Thank you. I do have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Cheryl.
Could someone from the development group, Evan perhaps, explain to us what the ramifications of something like this would be on this project?
Could you just state it exactly again, the language?
You want me to read it again, Evan? Okay.
Here, I just put it in the chat box. It should be
perfect. Development should improve pedestrian safety. All right, it popped out of the chat box. Let me see. 1 second. Okay, development should improve pedestrian safety at the TDA, in areas, including the area between the Westfield Church and the development. Yeah. So what's being asked here is, so typically development is required to do mitigations for traffic and to do improvements within the transit area. For larger projects like this could cost 10 million, 15, 20 million, who knows how much, to do sidewalk improvements in a much larger, broader area of the county. And that typically falls to the responsibility of the county. And so what the county has their own processes. In fact, I believe one of the processes they're looking into is specifically to look at safety and sidewalks outside of the TDA area for the larger network. So if something like this were to be included in the plan, for example, and that first development, let's say Virginia Tech was ready to go forward and couldn't afford 10 million, 15 million, $20 million, whatever it might be, to do these sidewalks, then that project wouldn't be able to go forward, and it would essentially stop the development within the metro area until this happened. So what typically happens more likely is when you're going through a process, you are required to do improvements within the transit area. There's a certain amount of offsite improvements that you typically are required to do that get put into your project as a requirement. And then typically the county would work to do additional improvements beyond that for a larger, broader issue like this. Part of the issue here is also, I think everyone agrees that there needs to be pedestrian safety. And so by starting with, bike lanes, sidewalks, the type of developments we're creating from Route 7 all the way to the metro, we're creating the precedent for a great walkable place. And then beyond the larger connections, there needs to be a conversation with the county about how those get paid for.
Let me just respond that first of all, I've been very clear when I've talked about this issue in the past. I don't view it as the developer's responsibility to make to do what the county should have been doing decades ago. Nonetheless, I don't care, right? What I care about, and what I think everyone in retrospect will care about, is that when some kid walking after school to his friend's house from Haycock Elementary is run over by a car that's going in this area, just like a kid was done in front of Longfellow Middle School, that this will seem really, really petty. And I don't think, Evan, that it's your responsibility to do it. And this is generally a comprehensive plan, and the county can do what it wants to do. But, we've had, if I recall, Judy Seif said like 30 years ago they were talking about it. Nancy McFalls, 10 years talking about it. And Cheryl Sim has come here and talking about it. And if people want to go, once again, to that Instagram site, they can see the exact statements from people because I put them in. You'll see there's a picture of a child there, and you can go through the boxes of person after person who comes and year after year is told, says that they want to have increased pedestrian safety. And now we're at a point where the comprehensive plan is being reviewed, where I've walked it. Once again, anyone who doesn't believe me, forget the studies, walk to Kazmont.
Hey, Paul, this is Evan. Let me just, what I think is important for the committee to understand, obviously the cause is important. There's no one on this call or committee that would ever say we shouldn't have a safe sidewalk access to an elementary school. Like that's just clear. I think the issue here, Paul, is, there was an incident on Shreve not very long ago as well, where there was a pedestrian death. And what happened in that community is the community was activated to work with the supervisor's office and to work with the City of Falls Church. And they received, I think it was somewhere around, however much it was, I think it was $6 million in NVTA grant funds to create a safe pedestrian access from the trail to Route 7. And that's the right conduit for this type of work. What probably should happen is, if this is it's clearly important to you and it's clearly important to members of the community, there needs to be an upswell and a commitment to work with the supervisor and do that. That really is not part of this master plan. The master plan should certainly say that it's, improved traffic safety is important and pedestrian connections are really important. All of that should be part of a comprehensive plan, but it's not something that in the state of Virginia and often in Fairfax County would be worded the way you've worded it here. So I think.
Well, I don't care about exact wording, but Evan, you keyed on the exact thing. Someone died and then they spent $6 million. Someone, I think it was Chris Wells, who said he's on the reactive side. And then I responded, I think it was in the November meeting, that everything here is reactive. I don't want to wait for some kid to be run over.
Right, so go do it.
No,
I'm saying you should go do it.
This is an encouragement for the county to do that.
Okay, Paul.
I'm not saying you should.
The right forum.
We're getting to be in a position where we're just going to have you back and forth with everybody.
Okay.
I'd like to
make a comment.
I'm sorry, who's that? Darren, yes, you go ahead.
So I think what I would like to see is the language. I agree with Paul. It needs to be strong language embedded in here so it's understood that, pedestrian safety is of utmost concern and needs to be addressed. And so I agree 100% with that. How we get to that point, we certainly don't want to have development stall because of it. And we're in a position here with the proffer mechanism that we can ask for certain proffers. But, I'm 100% with what Paul is saying, and that is, having a death is not the outcome that we want. So somehow we need to craft a language that will be real clear of what our intent is here. I think the language that you have, Paul, is a little bit beyond the scope, and that's what we need to address. So that's my thought on this.
Well, let me just.
No, wait, no, Paul, I'm sorry. I can't have you get back and forth with every person who comments unless everybody's gotten a chance first. Who else has got something to say about this? Cheryl?
We already approved last week the statement throughout the TSA and surrounding communities. New sidewalks and sidewalk improvements should be constructed where appropriate to facilitate access between the Metro Rail station, new development, existing neighborhoods. For those pathways that can accommodate possible bike trails, a decision regarding specific bike routes should be considered as the input of each community. We've already approved statements about sidewalks improvements. We can add for safety reasons in there if we want.
And I think we could even add something to this, but I'm not going to get into that quite till I've heard from everybody else. Thank you, Cheryl. Anybody else like to speak?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, Andrew, with the sort of development consortium and stuff. Just a quick question, Brian. I know Bob is not here tonight, but is there some discussion that we were going to try to do a follow-on motion to have transportation issues in the greater TSA area addressed after this to make sure that they didn't go away? And I did want to say too, the issue with the death on Shreve Road, there was a car accident there 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, and that neighborhood, the surrounding areas did band together they persuaded Supervisor Smith and then Supervisor Palchik's office to dedicate substantial funds and slow traffic down and put additional crossing stuff, because that's definitely a death trap over there. But didn't we talk about a follow-on motion to address these types of specific transportation issues? Because they shouldn't be going away.
Right. Yeah, I've mentioned at a couple of the past meetings that we are looking specifically into an active transportation plan for the wider area, connecting the surrounding neighborhoods. Again, trying to divorce that from the comp plan and what we're looking at specifically with the comp plan. I also want to say, there's going to be some potentially great pedestrian and bicycle facilities and connectivity that would come as a result of development. So to handicap that and say we need this specific, whether it be sidewalk in this location or whatever it might be, I think would be a disservice in a way. One thing we're getting potentially from the development that's going in at the City of Falls Church is that connectivity across Route 7 at Chestnut Street for pedestrians. Those folks on that side didn't have a very safe way to get to the metro. So I do want to just caution that putting something like this in the comp plan, as Evan spoke to, would be going quite a bit beyond the scope of what we normally do and handicapping what developers could do.
Tim, could I ask you to clarify something, and Andrew too, sure. I guess. So what happened on Shreve seems to be like a special exception to the way things usually go. My understanding from my experience is there's like a 6-year plan, is that correct? That's revised, that covers sidewalks and other similar types of projects. And from time to time, there are new regulations for this, and this, there are like a couple of hundred sidewalks on there throughout the entire county. Then you got to decide which ones are going to get priority and which ones are going to get funding. Am I correct on this? That's certainly what I'm seeing.
Right. There's a transportation priorities plan, and they would get put on that. And again, these things would take time to even draw out and implement. I think I mentioned a couple meetings ago that the City of Falls Church, they're working on the shared use path up along Shreve.
Mhm.
They have funding for that, but it doesn't even kick in till 2024. So
Okay, and that's
yes,
and
these
that's
things do take.
But sticking with the county, the first thing I would like to know is if that is the way things are supposed to work, how did this Shreve improvement essentially jump the queue? Because Paul is I understand, Paul, when a kid gets hit, then everybody's going to say we should have done something. But the thing is, there are situations like this so that the entire county and this list is meant to prioritize those that are the most dangerous or have the most traffic. So essentially what you're asking, it seems to me, is to have sidewalks on Casement and Beacon jump queue over other possible sidewalk installations that the entire county that might get put on the plan. And you're saying, but this one is special and it's got to jump ahead of it all.
Now, David, you've specifically mentioned me by name, so I get to respond, correct?
First, I will let you, but first I'd like to understand from Andrew and Tim how it is that this particular project seems to have managed to be an exception to that. Because if it is, then maybe it's not so much to ask for an exception in our situation.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you were referring to the Shreve Road Corridor study.
Well, I was.
But that was just a study. That's something Shreve Road just did. That was $100,000 to study potential improvements to Shreve Road. They don't actually have funding to make the improvements, so nothing is essentially jumping the queue.
All right.
In that regard.
What would they? What is? Do you know if Shreve is, if that sidewalk is even in the transportation priorities plan?
Which sidewalk?
Well, the one that Andrew was just referring to. I'm sorry, I haven't gone by there and looked, but there's been no actual change to the sidewalk, correct? It's just been a study. All right, is that it?
Right, there's just been a study, unless.
So for anybody to actually put something in, that would have to get nominated to be put on the transportation priorities plan. And then it would have to compete with sidewalks throughout the entire county to actually get implemented. Compete to be placed on the plan, or to be chosen among the ones that are on the plan for that particular year's implementation. And then funding would have to be available, correct?
Right, and that's not the only way things are funded, of course. The transportation priorities plan, there's other projects that could happen at supervisor's discretion, but it depends, obviously. And so,
okay.
Again, I think the language that's being proposed, it's a bit too specific, and it would handicap development to the detriment of pedestrian facilities, which I think people.
Okay. Thank you. So Paul, I will let you respond, but I just want to make sure you understand my point. I'm sure it is dangerous. You've walked it. It must look dangerous. You can probably go all over the county and find similar streets, and funding is limited. So you can say, well, the county is responsible for this, and it's probably likewise responsible for hundreds of other similar dangerous situations throughout the county for which funding is not necessarily available. So just understand, I think what you're asking is, because this development is occurring here, you want this one to get a priority over other ones, even though you are willing to admit that it's not the responsibility of the developer to fix it, it's the responsibility of the county to, I think you're saying, fix this one before you fix other ones.
David, I have made this point clear before, and you heard me say it clearly before the last meeting. That when they talked about the development of the 1,700 condos or houses and the related corporate campus and the restaurants and the amenities, that those developments will generate millions of dollars. Now, the area that is affected by the increased traffic that applies to those millions of dollars is not Annandale, it's not Tyson's, it's this area. And so to say, oh, gee, you're just sort of saying you deserve to be put at the head of the line. I'm not talking right now, although it should happen. I'm talking that this project will generate millions of dollars, and that some amount of money should be dedicated to put in sidewalks in the areas that will be burdened by the millions of dollars that are going to be generated. It is just so facile to try to come up with what you've basically done, which say, oh, well, we're one of many projects. No, we're not. This is not one of many projects. This is not one of many areas. This is an area that is going to be specifically impacted by this project, which at the same time that it generates millions of dollars, will be generating increased pedestrian traffic and increased vehicular traffic. So between the areas of Great Falls and Haycock Elementary, that is where there is a particular hard-hit group of people who are not represented, although seven of the nine people on this committee, the people from the village, the people from the pavilion, the people from the gates, and the Mount Daniel Civic Association, which you represent, have people who will be sending their children to those schools. And even though there's bus service, I'm sure your kids went to walk to their friend's house after school and then walked home. These people, the people you represent, the people that Cheryl and Jennifer represent, the people that Chris and I represent, the people that Linda and Holly represent, live in areas where their children will be going to this school and they'll be walking home one way or another after school. And that they should be protected. And that we have someone on this task force who lives nowhere in the area. But there's also a group of people who live in between that area who are not represented on this task force, who are particular problems. So once again, you hear me scream the word bureaucracy. Once again, you're throwing bureaucracy at people. There's going to be but the bottom line is there's going to be millions of dollars generated by this, and people should anticipate those millions of dollars just from the real estate taxes from 1,700 dwellings, and that Fairfax County should put some amount of money from that anticipated revenue and put it there. I have been in the private sector my entire life, except for 2 years when I worked at Congress, and I've never encountered something where someone comes with a project that generates millions of dollars and they have no idea how much it's going to be. You can go to Evan Goldman and Neil Kumar, and they'll tell you what their anticipated revenues are. They wouldn't be doing an investment if they weren't doing this, so that you could get some idea what the anticipated tax revenue is. And if that's not within your process, that's fine, but that's not the problem of the people who are going to be impacted by this.
Okay.
And one other, I just want to say one final thing. You've allowed the developers to speak. We have people from the community who should speak. And Converge doesn't even have a comprehensive agreement with them. And I know Cheryl Sim would like to speak. So if someone representing Converge should speak, I think someone representing the community should speak. And I'd like you to give Cheryl Sim a chance, since you've given Andrew Painter a chance.
Let me ask Brian. First, I want to make sure nobody else on the task force has anything to say about this.
Linda from the task force has had her hand raised for quite some time.
Okay, go ahead, Linda.
Been up there for so long and listening to it.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'd say there's
I see it. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Go ahead.
For me, there's a lot of unknowns. With this. I think, saying something in the plan that tax revenues should be used, for sidewalks or increase whatever, or even put schools in there, because you're going to need more money for Haycock. Maybe they have to add on to that or whatever. But I did look on the Fairfax government website about sidewalks and what Supervisor Faust and his team have, I guess, promoted. And they have done a lot with, and it seems like it's ongoing, on the main roads, trying to make sure that all the people can get to the main road, whether it's Westmoreland or Great Falls, just talking about this area. They just put in a sidewalk. I think it's been completed where the Jewish synagogue is. I forget, on Westmoreland to
Road of Shalom.
To the middle school. So I think, I was just going to say, I'd like to know what a 5-year plan was. Another thing I had questions about was there's a lot of communities. I do a lot of walking, particularly over the past 9 months and nothing else to do. And there are tons of areas that don't have sidewalks. And so for me, the most important thing is to do the main roads, particularly, you know, along Haycock to the school. I don't even know where if some of these I guess communities even want sidewalks. I think somewhere along the line, it might have been Michelle said that some people don't want to sell their property to make sidewalks. So it seems to me that maybe, you know, this is a total issue for Supervisor Faust's office to find out, you know, what do people in these tiny communities or enclaves really want to have? Some people want their privacy. They probably don't even want sidewalks because there's tons of the community as you go over 66 and you go to the right. I don't know the name of that street right hand. There's some townhouses that have sidewalks, but when you go in there, there's a lot of roads in there. There are no sidewalks. There is an exit that goes on to Great Falls. So I'm not really sure. I don't really have an answer for this other than, you know, there's more questions in my mind. And I think we just need to put something in there that relates to the Fairfax government and, you know, having the taxes that they're going to get from this go to whatever, you know, to the schools, sidewalks, and for safety. That's it.
Thank you, Linda. Anybody else on the task force? If I'm not seeing your hand, speak up, but I don't see any, or do I? Oh, no, Linda, you're just still up, I guess. Just take it down when you get a chance. Anybody else, Stephanie?
Yes, I just want to say that I've been studying these points in the clean version. They're number 1 through 10, and I don't see anything specifically referencing sidewalks. It says, you know, designs, landscaping, open space, public road improvements, use of materials, energy conservation, stormwater. Number 3 seems to be the appropriate place to consider pedestrian, you know, sidewalks. I don't know if it should be exactly Paul's language, but I do think we need to beef that up with, and I don't know what the scope should be, but yes, I think we need something stronger about pedestrian safety.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. I actually agree with you. I wouldn't be averse to some part of Paul's language being there, but he's got the motion for the whole thing first. So, so we really have to act on that before we proceed any further. Brian, I know this is a little unusual, but since some people who are just attendees probably have something significant to say about this that maybe we should consider, do you mind if we call on the ones who have raised their hands?
Paul, this is Darren. May I just?
Yeah, you can go first, Darren. Go ahead. Mm.
So yeah, sorry for the attendees who want to speak up. So you know, I spent I think it was a greater part of 18 months going through pedestrian issues in the CBC for task force. Super familiar with pedestrian issues from that, and we had a beautiful report that we put out with zero funding at the time. I've walked West Falls Church, run from West Falls Church home many a time. Done both, depending upon the day and the time, and I understand completely the constraints of that area. Some of it's seen some improvements with the trails heading up to Great Falls Street that were nice, but you know, it's definitely an issue that we feel throughout Drainesville, throughout the county and the region. You know, I think really it is a scope issue when we're looking at a site specific, you know, comprehensive plan, and you know, some of the general language to put in there, and when you start to really creep out into areas, you know, that cross over 66, the second crossing, not the connector road, but the actual crossing. You know, you're Mount Daniel area. You're impacted certainly by some of the future development, but there's so much more going on, and that's really where it is a county issue. When we're looking at the site, and perhaps I think maybe some of the adjacent linkages, but less than a quarter of a mile really to that site. You know, then we could get into, and again, I agree with Evan and others. We don't want to handcuff them and say this has to be done here by then, because this is just a general language we want. But we certainly want to beef up the pedestrian safety, the non-motorized is really the term of art to use, not just pedestrian, because you got runners and people, mothers with strollers, etc. I certainly think we could wordsmith it, and perhaps if Paul is amenable to working in some friendly language to kind of address what's been said, by myself included, to look at it. But I think once we start getting too broad, it really weakens, because it isn't the responsibility of developers to fix those, and it really is beyond the scope of what what we're supposed to look at. And so Paul has pointed out, I don't live in that direct area. I certainly have been to that metro many times. Now that the Silver Line is in, I use that one, but that doesn't diminish my capacity on this task force. I'm appointed by the McLean Citizens Association, and I'm appointed as a community member, and I've been active in the community for 32 years. So everybody's input on our task force is important, whether you live right next to it or near it. And so those are my general thoughts. But perhaps in closing, we could offer some friendly amendments to this that Paul would accept, that wouldn't handcuff the developers, that we could move forward on. So thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Anybody else on the task force? Brian, I had started to ask you, do you consider it out of order for me to call on a few of the people who've raised their hands among attendees?
David, I'd say it's up to you as task force chair. Our concern with staff is making sure the task force has sufficient time to review.
Right, I know, and I figured this would take up a lot of time, but we are going to have to wind it up. I would like to call on the attendees, but I'm going to
David,
give you
you
each about
you called on the developer. You called on the developer of an entity that doesn't even have a complete agreement with you with Virginia Tech.
I called on.
If Andrew Painter could speak.
Paul,
Paul,
listen to me. Stop it a second. I called on him because he's a panelist. All right, he's not an attendee.
He's not on the task force. He's not on the task force.
I'm sorry,
Cheryl Sim and Judy Seifa panelists.
He is a panelist. No, they are not. They are not panelists. They are attendees. All right. I called on him just as I would call on Evan or Tim or Bob Pecora or anybody else like that. I will call on these people, but I also see there's about 5 of them. I'm going to ask you to take only like a minute each, please, because we are going to have to make a decision on this. Cheryl Sim, you are the first. I'll call on you. Cheryl?
Yeah, thank you very much, David. Mm-hmm. I have to say my blood pressure must be 300 listening to this discussion. As you know, David, I've joined the MCA.
Yes.
And Darren, you can get my email address from David, and I invite you to come to our area. And for those others of you who have seemed to have implied that our area has done nothing about our concerns about pedestrian safety these past couple of years, you can talk to Jane Edmondson and Supervisor Faust. We have one hell of a record of pressing for safety improvements in our area. I fully support Paul Rothstein's amendment, and I appreciate everything he has done to highlight our area. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. And I think most people do know that you and Nancy on this list and some others have been involved in in improving safety along Westmoreland. I wasn't aware anybody was disputing that you've been doing something. I must have missed that. Thank you very much. Judy Seif, please, next.
Yes. As you all know, I am a resident of the area. I was not able to be on the task force, but I've nonetheless attended all but one of these meetings as an interested citizen because I did participate in the first amendment plan for this station. I really appreciate your hard work, but I do recognize that you all have in many cases tried to protect some of your own in your specific communities, and I don't blame you, whether it's the height of a building or a gate to your community. I too, however, commend Paul Rothstein because he's looking out for parts of the community that are going to be greatly affected, and we're not as well represented. And I thank you, Paul. I recognize that it's very tricky to word this, but I think that it is the real job of the task force to make a very, very great attempt to put in some of the concerns that we have about safety. My activist days are almost over. I'm 76. I'm less active than I was when I was 30 and 40 living in this neighborhood. But we did put in that first plan amendment information about safety, streetscape, and lighting, and it was totally ignored. It never happened. We did not get a safe path along Haycock Road until someone was sexually assaulted right in front of my house. So you have to wait, I guess, until either a kid is run over or someone sexually assaulted before you really get action. You've got to do better. We've got to be a beacon for making change. I know that you have to be careful about the developers, but since we are going to be greatly affected, David, we should come before a lot of neighborhoods in terms of getting the kinds of appropriate safety and streetscape that will make our neighborhood more attractive rather than nuisance laden. So I want this to go on record because I've been fighting for this for pretty close to 50 years now. And you have the opportunity to make it happen. So I really beseech the task force to spend the time on this, as well as the issues that are very important to your individual communities, because this is important to a much larger community, even though it's within very easy walking distance of this whole project. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Meredith Allard, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I do agree that pedestrian safety is very important, and it is mentioned in the draft text elsewhere. And I'm very for better crosswalk signage, but I think the focus from outside the city should be done outside of this group. I'm sure the county can set up more issue focused studies to evaluate this at a later time. And that's just my comment. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. Nancy, please, you're next.
Hi, yes, thanks for the chance. To counter what the last speaker just said, this is a county matter. It's not just a City of Falls Church matter. And we have been begging the county for a long time, and they have antiquated processes to get change enacted. They predate things like GPS programs that allow cut through traffic at a huge rate, and they predate these huge building booms that are occurring at Mosaic and Tyson's and all around us. Our neighborhood is sandwiched in between. If you think 1 mile between your development and Haycock is insurmountable and somehow the traffic won't just be flying through there, I want to remind everyone that 1 mile is the distance that our youngest elementary children are expected to walk to school. So we have little kids, 5-year-olds, walking that distance. There's nothing to stop the cars at 66. They will enter a residential area, and we already are plagued by all sorts of problems. So I'm asking for pedestrian safety. I know a lot of sidewalks, etc. That's very expensive. Then focus on traffic calming. Focus on beefing up Route 7 and keeping the excess cars off of our little neighborhood streets. And I'm 100% certain that the Shrevewood community begged for help for years, but a mom had to be hit by a car and killed in front of her kid in order to be paid attention to. So we're asking not for the builder to cough up a lot of money right now. We're not asking for the county to, we don't want to be prohibitive to the building, but we need some of this tax revenue to finally go towards the protection and the traffic mitigation that we've been begging for years. And we need the county to change and be more proactive. Don't require taxpayers to beg and put in petitions on a street by street basis. That's not helpful. It's just too antiquated and too slow of a process. Our times have really changed, and I hope the county will help us move forward safely. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Sarah Ford, please.
Yes, I was coincidentally tuning in as a concerned resident on the same issue that Paul raised, because I'd reviewed this document and I thought the absence of pedestrian safety along Haycock Road to the north was a pretty glaring omission. Haycock is pretty much the exclusive road to access this development area that you're proposing for all of the Fairfax County residents who live north of it. So I really reject this idea that it's somehow out of scope. I mean, even just the Haycock Bridge over the 66 road, for example, there's no pedestrian guardrails. The sidewalk access is partly blocked by weeds and debris. There are no bike lanes. There are constantly, clashes between people on bikes, people jogging, people with strollers, and somebody has to go out into the road to make it work. So I really reject this idea that it should take a pedestrian death and some sort of social movement just to get basic safety in place to this development that you're proposing. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. And just for the record, I don't think anybody here is saying we should wait for a pedestrian death. I know that happens often. I've seen a lot of intersections like that. It's not really that. And Haycock is a busy street. I think Paul's amendment is, though it doesn't specify it, is going not really just to Haycock, but to side streets without sidewalks. I agree it's not actually specified in there. I would like to get back to trying to finish this, because we're going to wind up spending one task force meeting on 10 pages and then another one on 1 page if we don't get moving. Paul has got a motion that has been seconded, and we've had a discussion on it.
I request a roll call vote on this.
Well, Paul, just hold on a second. We can do that, but before we do, I want to indicate that a couple of people have also noted that, in fact, this group of points here in this numerical category really do not include anything about pedestrian safety. I think both Stephanie and Darren have pointed that out, and I agree. So I certainly I would not object to something in there. Personally, I think Paul goes too far, but that's me. So I would only ask Paul, before we start with a vote, whether you would consider an amendment friendly if it eliminated your condition that no construction or development start until these things are fixed, and just restricted it to discussion to say your first sentence. I'm not necessarily, I read it the exact language, but your first sentence, development should improve pedestrian safety in the TDA, including the area between West Falls Church and Haycock Elementary. And we could even add at your excuse me, at the end, like something like, so that it would, in order to offset the increased danger for increased traffic or such, etc. The part that I am, well, I'm just going to ask you if that's acceptable for you to leave out the part which I think is problematic about tying this to the tax revenues and saying no development can be authorized until these improvements are in place. I think I
would have to look at specific language, but I'm not looking to water this down to a point where Judy Seif and Nancy McFalls and Cheryl Sim are coming back 5 years from now, or more likely people look at it after someone's been killed. So, I mean, I don't know how you procedurally want to handle that. If you want to put this off to the next meeting and send some language, I guess I could look at it. But as of now, I have a motion. It has been seconded. I have the right to get a vote.
Yes.
So I don't know exactly how you want to handle that.
We will proceed with your vote, Paul. I was basically just asking if you would consider it a friendly amendment to take that middle part out.
I would be willing to look at something. I'd be willing to look at something if you want to postpone this vote to this February meeting. I'd be willing to look at that.
All right. Brian, I'm not sure procedurally how we proceed here, because I think that might be, if Paul is willing to do that, you basically, are you saying basically you're withdrawing your motion so that we can do that?
No, I'm not saying, no one has told me that that's going to happen.
David, he's saying table. He's table.
Well, what I'm saying, and we could put aside the parliamentary procedure, is if we want to put this, if you want to put this vote off until the next meeting,
okay,
I'm happy to look at language between now and the next meeting, and we can come to something we can all agree to. I'm really, I'm happy to have
somebody else. Somewhere somebody needs to be.
David, this is Michelle. Can I just jump in real quick? I'm sorry, my video doesn't seem to be working tonight, so I'm just audio. But we can. I mean, I hear the part about pedestrian safety and David, your discomfort, and I think probably our discomfort, definitely our discomfort also with postponing all development as part of a plan amendment based on tax revenues, which is not something we usually put in the plan. But we can work with David, you, or however you want to do it into strengthening the language. If you want to table this for now into the next discussion, so that we can come back with some language.
Okay.
As part of this, and David, we can talk to you afterwards about how you want to work that, how you want to organize that. But
I'm fine with doing it. I'm just trying to make sure I understand procedurally, because I mean, either you're asking to go ahead with the motion now, Paul, or you're saying you're willing to table it till next time, but it can't be both.
No, if we're gonna, as long as I'm not prejudiced in offering this amendment as I've worded it, if we don't come to an agreement, I'm perfectly happy to put it off to the next meeting, and then we see if we can come up with that. So as long as that's the case, sure. I'd rather have.
Guys?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next. Don't we need a motion to table?
To table. Motion to table.
Let's. Yeah, okay, and I'll second that if I can do it as chair.
But I just want to be clear what the motion to table means. It means it can be brought up at the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can. If you're not satisfied with any language that comes up, you can raise the same thing again. Okay, so we need to vote on this, please.
Can I just motion that we adopt it by unanimous consent?
The motion is to table this till next meeting, between which times we'll try to come up with some alternate language we might consider. Stephanie, how do you vote on that?
I vote to table.
Okay, you move to table. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get this all down, so you're going to have to bear with me. Paul, you're
yes.
Okay. Linda?
Yes.
Okay. Jennifer?
Yes.
Okay. Holly? Holly, can I get you to respond? How do you, the motion is to table this issue. I'm sorry. What's your response?
Table it. Yeah, that's fine. Till next time.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
All right, Darren?
Yes.
Okay. I'm missing somebody. Chris?
Yes.
Okay. Cheryl?
Vote to table.
Okay. It's unanimous. All right. So we will table this, and staff can come up, and I'll discuss this with staff. We'll try to find some language that definitely addresses pedestrian safety that can be added here, and we'll bring that up next time. And
but David, as a final thing,
but Paul will have a chance to, if he doesn't like it, to raise his original amendment.
Right, and just not that whatever the ultimate outcome is, if it doesn't mention that area, I'm not going to agree to it. But you can all figure out what you want to do based on that.
I don't see why it doesn't have to mention that area. I understand that the concern is not just everywhere within 2 miles of the development. It's more focused on school pedestrian stuff, right, Paul?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
We're 7 of the 9 of us.
Okay.
And communities are 7 of the 9 of us.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Fine. All right. That's good. Now maybe we can look at the rest of this. So what I'd like to do is look at every one of these except for number 3 and see if we can get through at least this page here. So, does anybody have a question about any of the others? Now I'm going back to if you've got the marked up version, we're going right back to the bottom of page 10, the first one. And the introduction here is all development proposals within the transit development area must be responsive to the following development criteria. I don't know if you want to go through them one by one. The first one is about, it'll take a while, but as everybody has read these other ones, does anybody have a question or a concern about any of them?
I do, David.
Okay, Chris, yes, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make note of the number 2, which references figure 15. Figure 15 has the new height proposal for the different areas, and I think that's still under question, under debate.
Yes, let me take a look. It does explain to me where's the reference to the height by referring to the figure. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and
so I'm just saying not to necessarily approve the number 2 as it stands, because we haven't necessarily agreed with figure 15.
Yes, you're correct. And I think I'd caught that too. I guess my feeling about it is as long as 15 is going to reflect whatever heights we actually agree on ultimately, then there's no problem in referring to 15 here. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I just wanted to make note of it. Yeah.
Just make the point. Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's see. Linda, you have your hand up. Or is that still?
I mentioned this last time, about our contract with WMATA, and I think this would be number 10, the stormwater.
Okay.
So I'm not sure where we would put anything about, making sure that the villages and the pavilion, still have this contract, and whether we would still be, is this just something that's just going to happen? That our stormwater will still continue to go into that pond. We have to, I guess, I'm not sure about the contract or what it means, for this.
All right. Can somebody answer that concern on staff or developer or somebody?
Yeah, I would say in the comprehensive plan, we don't generally recognize and speak to, I guess, private agreements like that in terms of necessarily development conditions, as we have here. So, but your concern, Linda, is that this is going to terminate and then you're going to be adversely affected in it from a perspective.
Well, I don't know if we are or not. I'm just saying that the contract goes to 2026. I guess when our developer came along, they made a 30-year contract with WMATA about maintaining that pond. But I don't know whether that's still going to exist after 2026 or it's just going to go away and all this is mute. I'm just saying it's there.
Okay.
I don't know how that's ever going to affect us or not. Maybe it won't.
Okay. Are you then just pointing something out rather than advocating that we change something in this?
Right.
Then,
I'm just saying I don't know where to make it known that this contract exists. That's all.
And I think Brian is saying that probably wouldn't be reflected in the plan. I would guess the only thing that we'll be concerned about is whether or not in the absence, if the contract runs out and I guess is not renewed, where does that leave you from a stormwater point?
Well, it's just going to keep on going to the ponds. I don't know whether this is all mute or not. I'm just saying that we have something. That's all.
Who does WMATA continue to own the pond after this? It's their property, right, Brian?
Yeah.
Does WMATA have a?
That's correct.
I know this isn't really addressing. I mean, Linda's just pointing this out and not changing it. But is WMATA indicating that it will maintain this pond? Or not? Or don't we know?
They are. I mean, I think, we're still, I guess, we don't know entirely what their stormwater plan is, but I expect since
Okay.
that is an important resource in terms of dealing with the stormwater in the area. And as we had mentioned in the December meeting, we're expecting that WMATA will actually have to reduce their total peak runoff. So, that's something that, they, I guess removing the pond would be detrimental to that goal.
Okay. So Linda, it'll be addressed, I guess, when the time comes, as I think when.
Okay. No problem.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Okay. Jennifer, did you have her hand up? Unless you, or don't you? Did you take it down, or is that from before?
No, I don't think I need to.
Okay.
bring this up.
Chris, do you have a concern still, or is that from last time that your hand is up?
Sorry, it's from last time.
Okay, fine. All right. Anybody else? Because in the absence of anybody else, and having a concern here, I think we will agree to accept all. I'm just trying to see if I had one. Okay. So what we've done here, I think, without in the absence of anybody objecting, is with the exception of number 3 on here, we have approved this list of 10 items as revised here. Let's go on to the bottom of the page. I think the paragraph at the bottom of the page here that starts "in addition to" is basically just a reflection of the fact that that the TDA has been now divided up into these subunits. So the language that was there before really wouldn't have been accurate anymore. Is that correct, Brian?
That's right.
Okay, all right. So does anybody have an issue with that? That should be, I would assume, not controversial to make those changes. Do we need to look at this map?
I think so. Are we figure 16?
Yes, Stephanie, go ahead.
So the caption is open space, landscape buffers, and pedestrian circulation in the TDA. But if you look at this, what you actually see on these little descriptors, it says major pedestrian walkway, streetscape, and landscape buffer.
Stephanie, this is Brian.
Yeah.
We can, I think you're right, we can update the title of this figure so that it more accurately represents what's here. Previously, it displayed one park, and we've added an additional graphic in the draft plan that shows the locations of 4 proposed parks. And that's just a holdover from the previous version that correctly identified needs to be updated, so we can do that.
But Brian, I'm trying to get clear. What is it exactly that you mean to portray in this picture?
It's definitely, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're saying the title just doesn't accurately reflect what's being represented in the graphic, and so I think pedestrian circulation and landscape buffers, striking the open space might be more appropriate.
And I think there are some more proposed parks that aren't shown here too. On this version.
That's right. Yeah. Well, we had moved the proposed parks over to the other map in place of this one.
Okay.
Should they not be? It's hardly a big issue, but should they not be on here, given that this is supposed to show open space and stuff like that? A park is an open space, right?
Well, there on one of the EYA plans, there was an open space that was up in the top part near that famous bow-shaped area, and it's not illustrated on this figure.
That's right. Yeah, we had illustrated on the other figure that we had added.
I just want
figure
them to be
18.
consistent.
Okay, so does it matter? Should it be on here, Brian, or not? Or
I think you know, we could include it on here, but I think our perspective is that if it's already on the other figure, then we could go ahead and just strike open space, and so this is pedestrian circulation and landscape buffers. You know, keeping that this map for that purpose, and then we have the other figure. Scroll to it.
yeah, I know it's a little further down. I know.
Figure 17, which identifies parks and open space here,
Yeah.
here, and here along the main route, and then on the top right next to the in the bow-shaped area that Stephanie was just referenced.
Okay, you all right with that, Stephanie?
Well, I would like them to be consistent. That's all. I mean, it looks like in some areas it looks like it can be built to 35 feet. We had that whole discussion last time. I would just like them to be consistent. I will be looking for that in the next draft that we look at.
Mm-hmm. Is there a reason it should not be in the one in figure 16, Brian? I mean, if you think it's inconsistent or something, or with what you're saying, then
I guess the reason that we hadn't included it is because we thought it was perhaps redundant if they're in the other graphic, where we thought it was more appropriate to put them. And so we didn't include it in this one, simply to let the features that are being displayed here take the focus on this map.
all right. Stephanie, you all right with that? I mean, I don't want to make a big issue with this because I don't think it's that big, but if it matters to you, we'll pursue it.
I'll get back to you on this. I guess the purpose of each figure, I guess each one is highlighting something different, and it's just introduces some lack of clarity, I think. But we can move on.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Cheryl.
Jennifer and I looked at this, and if you look at the green landscape buffer where the gates is, that appears that landscape buffer area is inside our property line, and we believe that it's outside our property line. There is a landscape buffer area that the county owns, but it's not inside our property line, it's outside our property line.
Okay, so you're referring to the one way down at the bottom there, not the one because that's your development there. So
Correct.
you're the one that's like behind Hickory Street.
Correct. The green line right behind the gates, it looks like our property line is outlined with the landscape buffer area inside our property. We believe it's outside our property. We've had some reason to talk to the county lately about that. So this map is actually inaccurate, we think.
Okay.
We can look at that, Cheryl. Since the gates is outside of the study area, we frankly didn't examine or propose any changes to the landscape buffer from what was already on the map.
We had some really big legal issues about that, and to have something inaccurate in a recent plan, maybe you can just get rid of this figure.
I remember you saying you didn't like figure 16. You or Michelle or somebody said you would have been happy without it. So maybe we should. Actually, picking up.
Jennifer, can I just interject?
Yes,
David,
Jennifer, go ahead, please.
David, I
Yes.
think you had asked the question, but I'm not sure it was answered. At least not. I didn't hear an answer. But I think, David, you asked, what is the purpose of Figure 16?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
And since the question has come up, maybe we don't need it. I am interested to know what is the purpose, because I keep looking at this going, I'm not sure what this is telling me about anything. So if there's a reason, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, why do you need to have the landscape buffer shown?
To be frank, that's a question that we had discussed amongst ourselves in the Department of Planning and Development, and it does have a couple of disparate ideas in it in terms of having the primary pedestrian walkways and landscape buffers. And the reason we decided to end up keeping it in the draft text, though, is because it does contain recommendations for areas outside of the study area, which we were only authorized to study the Virginia Tech parcels and the WMATA parcels. So, it contains a recommendation for major pedestrian walkway through the village and for streetscape along Haycock Road, and then the landscape buffer behind the gates. And since we weren't authorized to amend the plan for those areas, we decided ultimately to keep it and move the parks over to a separate figure.
We can keep it, but we've had legal issues about that landscape buffer area. And so we need to have that designation designated outside of our property line.
In fact, I'll extend what Cheryl's saying now that she's pointed it out, because it also extends across the fronts of 4 new houses that have been built on Hickory Street. And I don't think those people would like to think that their front yards are all part of the landscape buffer. I mean, there's no landscape buffer there, it's their property. So I think what you're saying, Brian, though, is that you weren't trying to amend any part of the plan that didn't relate to what you're actually changing here.
That's right.
Okay. So,
David, it may be that this is just out of date, because where that green area is as you noticed, there, it goes across the 4 front yards there.
Yeah.
And there's Hickory Street actually exists up until the boundary with the gates. And then there's a section between the gates and the folks who live on the Birch Street that's actually county property that is a buffer zone, but that's not reflected here.
Okay.
So it might just be out of date and needs to be updated.
I do also want to say that.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
As a figure in the plan, it's not necessarily a legal document saying where a yard is and who it belongs to. First of all, and secondly, these are viewed as recommendations, not a reflection of what is there today. So certainly there's no major pedestrian walkway that goes straight through from Haycock Road through the village and through the existing berm right there. That doesn't exist today. And similarly, although it may recommend a landscape buffer there, this isn't necessarily taken as an indication of something that exists right there currently.
Okay. It seems to me that this is not going to be the forum in which to do something about it. I know that I had noticed and taken this up with Brian too back when we had our one-on-one. There's a lot of stuff in the present plan that's not being changed that talks about commercial development on the southeast side of Hickory. Well, you've got the gates there and you've got houses there, some of which are quite new. So it's really not kept up to date. But this is not the forum to change those things, unfortunately. And I don't know how we get them changed. But since it's actually not legally indicating that that's the land, that shouldn't, I think for the two of you who are in the gates, this can't be taken as some sort of legal representation that, in fact, the property is that buffers inside your property.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with not changing. Okay. We've got the legal documents showing exactly what the property line is. I didn't know if this needed to be updated or not, but I think it seems, David and Brian, you're suggesting that this serves the purpose for which it's intended. And I'm good with that.
Okay.
I'll let Cheryl speak for herself.
Cheryl, you okay with it?
I have no problem if it's not a legal document.
Okay. So Brian, actually, we can't really approve this figure yet, can we, quite, because you're going to make some changes to it. So we should defer this, I think, until we see the changes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, let's just pass over it and we'll see what changes Brian has made till next time. Looking now at the bottom of page 12, land unit recommendations. Maybe we can get through a lot of this in a hurry because you'll see there's about a whole page worth of stuff that's just crossed out. And I think it's largely just because it's been, Brian, you comment on it, please. But I think it's just that it's just no longer really an accurate description of the property or I mean, why don't you comment on it, Brian?
Yeah, I think it's because it was, it may be because in some cases, some of the description was no longer accurate. I think there was, as I'd mentioned previously, there's a lot of attention paid to who owns what property in the plan here, and we want to focus more on what the expectation is for future development, not necessarily discussing the property ownership. So that was certainly part of what was changed here. And then I guess continuing on to page 13, though, that's when it gets into the more substantive land use recommendations, which were replaced with the subunits, and which we're proposing changes to.
Right. Okay. Does anybody have any issue with the material that has been crossed out? I do have one question myself. Lines 12, 13, 14, wherever it is, they talk about moderate tract being appropriate for residential development. So to the extent that such development complements rather than competes with its use as a transit hub, and the surrounding road network supports additional residential development without diminishing access to the station. I mean, that was a pretty big principle, I think, in the original plan. Now, I agree. Now we're developing it differently, but that principle should still apply, shouldn't it? And where is it if it's not here?
I think it does in terms of the complements rather than competes with its use as a transit hub. That was, and we had some discussion over what exactly that meant, and it was kind of a little unclear to us, especially because a big part of our effort here was trying to implement the Board of Supervisors transit-oriented development guidelines, and all of our efforts are really focused on ensuring that there's great transit-oriented development here, so that people can walk and bike to the metro station. They can access it by their automobiles. They can take buses, and so I mean that's really at the heart of what this effort's about.
Well, I don't want to hold things up based on it, but my concern is if access to the metro is the most important point about this tract, since it is a metro station, then then taking it out seems to me to lead to the possibility that the development could in fact impede access. And I know that you're saying, well, no, that wasn't the point of it all, but I'm still rather concerned about the difficulty of people driving through all of this developed area to drop somebody off, driving around the entire parking garage to come back out. I'm not completely convinced that the way it's developed actually doesn't interfere with its use as a transit area. And that's something I'm going to bring up separately to you, because I've got some questions for staff. But it sort of bothers me that that language is not, if that language is not anywhere in the plan anymore.
I don't know if you have we can look at, I guess, exploring some options for,
okay, all right,
how to make sure that's reflected.
Okay, I'd appreciate if you could at least do that and show me where it could go. Otherwise, I won't hold this up. But I think that's a very important principle behind the whole use of the property. And if it's any way taken out as an emphasis, it just makes me nervous. All right, if nobody else has a problem with any of this, though, can we agree to accept the deletion of all of this material down to, what is it, like through about line 37 or so? If anybody's got it.
I agree with you, David, about the maintaining it as a transit hub.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I don't think I have anything else. So let's go down to line 40, and now we have, I guess, what is new material, but only for about half a page. This seems to be general statements about land unit A, which is what we're talking about here, A1 and 2, I guess. If everybody's looked at it, it all looks perfectly acceptable language to me, I think. Does anybody have a concern with any of it? Anything that I think is omitted or? Although I guess I could suggest that language that I just mentioned maybe could be stuck in here somewhere, but I don't know. I didn't look at it that way. Nobody else has a concern with this material though, right? So I would say let's agree that we've accepted the material from line 40 down through line 2 of page 14. Now we have a lot of struck out material again. Evan, sorry, Brian, maybe you can explain this. This I take it is just not what we're asking for anymore, basically.
That's right. A lot of this, much of this relates to the kind of the current institutional development option for the Virginia Tech property, which is for the 240,000 square foot educational facility, and then also for the it also refers to the some of the previous struck through text about the recommended dwelling units and office and retail use at that site. And so we were just proposing a strike through of this, since later on in the subunits section we included the new recommendations that we're proposing.
Okay.
Subunit A2.
Okay. Does anybody have a problem with all of this material that has been struck out from line 4 through the first paragraph of page 15? I don't think I'm seeing any hands.
I don't see any hands either.
Okay, all right, let's let that go. So I think we've essentially approved down through that. Now we have about a page worth of material leading up to a map. Let's look at this as one whole unit. The urban design recommendations. Has anybody seen anything in this material that they would have a problem with? All right. I'm kind of thinking we can consider that adopted.
Does this include the land use recommendations with the number of dwelling units? Because I thought we haven't approved the number of dwelling units yet.
Let me see. I may have not noticed that.
It's called land use recommendation. It's before the urban design recommendation, and it's not struck out. It's got numbers in.
Oh, I see. You're right. Maybe we better look at that again. I'm sorry. I may have gone over that. Oh, no,
Yeah.
you're right. That's part of what we're looking at.
Lines 8 through 16.
Right. Okay.
15.
Right. We haven't really decided that, have we?
Not yet. We said that we were going to get a comparison of what's in the plan today versus what they're recommending, just for us to understand the differences. We're not saying that we disagree or agree. We just want to know what the differences are.
Okay. Had we agreed? We had gotten that. We decided that at the last meeting. Cheryl, did we? I didn't remember.
Yeah, we did, because there was one section in the last minute meeting that we didn't approve. And that was specific numbers. It was on page 7, at the very bottom, line 48 to page 8.
Right. Yes, exactly. You're right. We did not. So
that paragraph right directly before that on page 7. That's exactly where you want to put in your transit station issue. because it talks about these public goals and objectives and what the goals and objectives are for this. And that's where you want to put your transit area thing.
Okay.
On page 7, lines 34 to 45.
Okay. Brian, can you take a look at that as a place where that language could be inserted?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're talking about the promotion of metro rail ridership, renewal of improvement of the community, and reduction of auto dependency. If you put your metro thing right in there, then it looks like it's one of the goals.
Okay. So even though we've gone past all that, this is why last time I said I think we ought to be able to revisit text. So if you can just make a note to maybe add something there and we can consider it next time then, Brian. And as to what Cheryl pointed out, thank you for catching that, Cheryl. I think I would say, can we agree to defer approving lines 8 through 10 until we've addressed that whole issue? So if anybody objects to that, let me know. Right now, what I would say is let us defer approval of 8 through 10 and approve lines 11 through the top of the next page, line 4. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. I think, you got that, Brian? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, now we have a map, figure 17, which does show this park. Does anybody have any comments on this?
I'm sorry, I wasn't done with the.
Oh, sure, Stephanie, I'm sorry.
So there's a paragraph says the WMATA commuter parking garage should be treated to minimize the impact of the structure on the public realm. But the last sentence of that paragraph there, it says the site design of subunit A1 should not preclude future redevelopment of the WMATA commuter parking garage. And we had a discussion about this last time. There still needs to be commuter parking somewhere because everybody can't walk to that. No, we can't walk to that metro from Lemon Road. So how is this addressed? If it's going to be redeveloped as a commuter parking garage, where are commuters going to park who can't walk there? That's my issue with that paragraph.
Okay.
Stephanie, I think we can get back to you on that and propose some additional changes that still stress the importance of providing commuter parking at the Metro Rail station.
Commuter parking, because we've got other parking that's for.
Yeah, commuter parking.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, sorry, David.
No, that's a concern. I'm sorry if I moved too fast for you. I was looking for hands. We've decided we will at least revisit that, just like we're going to revisit a couple of other pieces of the text. And I hope I can remember where they all are. All right, let's look at the map. Before we look at the map, it's 8:53. How long are we willing to go, given that we may still want to hear from give at least 5 or so minutes for other attendees to speak? I mean, I can go for longer, but I don't. Brian, do you have a feeling about this? Do you want to stop at a certain point? Like at about 5 minutes, or?
Yeah, I'll leave that one up to you. If you feel comfortable proceeding a little longer, we can. If you want to stop.
All right. Let's see how long it takes to get through a little bit more of this. And if we start running into issues, then maybe we need to stop. And I'm sorry, I know you wanted to get further down. How many more of these meetings we're going to wind up having to have? So anyway, the map, which is figure 17 on page 16, does anybody have any comments on this?
I actually might. Could you just could you expand, please? I hadn't really focused on this before. Is this the part that goes? So that goes. Where is this relation to the Virginia Tech residential tower?
The Virginia Tech is on the bottom left corner.
It's hard to see Brian's cursor. It's so small, but it's between that. But it's kind of to the right of that blank block, horizontal. I mean, right. Okay.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, I don't know if this is the time you want to get into this conversation, but we still have an open issue in the village, and I believe, based on the shadow study, the shadows will also, at least part of the year, affect the gates and the pavilions. But one of the things that we want is a buffer. So I'm not entirely, I don't know if you want to start getting into that conversation now. And in fact, I don't think we're quite ready to have that conversation now because we haven't been able, we only got the shadow study a little while ago. And I think it was Thursday or Friday, and we don't have a consultant yet. But to us, at least, the concept of having this going in that direction next to the tower or near the tower, where we would probably prefer some of that buffer be put between the tower and us. So, I don't know if that's a conversation you want to have now, or if at 5 to 9 you want to put that off until we have that larger conversation about the Virginia Tech Tower.
It might make sense to put it off because it's certainly we can't approve part of the map. That's sort of silly. So if that's actually going to affect approval of the map, maybe we should. Does anybody else have a problem with any of this? Chris, do you share Paul's concern, given that you're also from the village?
I do completely.
Okay, all right. Anybody else on this or any other aspect of this map? Why don't we look at it again next time? I do have one question though. This area that's being designated as a park, possibly a dog park, that's up in the northwest corner or northeast corner of this map. I mean, is this set in stone that if we approve this map, we're going to get development on that lot? I mean, I used to walk by that lot all the time when I went to the metro, and it's wild and unkempt and might look kind of ugly to a lot of people, but also probably habitat. So I don't know, I'm not saying it can't be developed or opposed to it being developed. What bothers me a little bit is that it seems to be starting to get built into this plan that it is going to become some sort of public facility. Somebody might have something to say about destroying the habitat there.
Yeah, I would want to remind I guess everyone that the comprehensive plan is a guide, so none of this is truly set in stone in terms of whether a park would be precisely there in that location or not.
So
it's a recommendation that we would likely expect a park there if a development proposal came forward.
So if the comp plan changes were approved and then there were a zoning application, the developers would have to come in and plan one there, and then there would be some sort of public reaction to that or opportunity to react to that.
That's right.
Okay. All right. It also raises, if it's a public facility, it seems to me it also raises parking issues, because I don't know that you can assume that a facility there will be used only by people, say in the pavilion, walking across the street to walk their dogs. If there aren't a lot of dog parks, I don't know, people may drive there. But those are my issues, and we're not going to look at the map anymore tonight, so I'll drop that. We have another map. I wonder if we can do the other map. Or is that too related to the following text, Brian?
I think it's, it's just an example. It's not meant to be, something that's prescriptive. It's just kind of like one possible, permutation of how somebody could, of a development plan that reflects both figure 17 as well as the building massing and heights section and the urban design recommendations section. So it's not saying buildings must go in these locations. It's
okay.
It's purely an example.
Okay. Given that it says that, are we all willing to approve this map? Or does anybody have a concern with it? All right, let's consider figure 18 approved. I know it's late. Let me see if we can get a little, because I'm disappointed I knew we were going to have a long discussion on that one issue, but we've got a long ways to go. Let me see if we can at least get through this next several paragraphs that are, I'm seeing a problem here. Let's take a quick look and see if we can get through these next several paragraphs that are being added. If you've all taken a look at that, do you have any issues with it? I will say right away that on the last paragraph, line 24, there's again a reference to figure 15, but as with Chris's point before, 15 will show some heights by saying maximum building heights are depicted in 15. We're not approving any particular height, in my opinion. Does anybody have any concern about any of this? Paul, do you? Because I mean, I know on the next page, they start talking about 115 feet and, on line 7 and all that. Is this something that we need to defer because we're still not set on building heights of the Virginia Tech building? Or not?
Paul, looks like you're
I'm
muted.
sorry, I admit I was zoning out for a minute.
That's okay. What I'm
no pun intended.
No, it's okay. If we do you have? Go ahead. Do you want me to explain what my question was?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'm trying to see if we can approve these next 3 edited paragraphs, but I see a possible issue on page 18 when we start talking about building heights and portions of the building that are directly across the villages should be no more than 115 feet height and all that.
That's a part of my next amendment.
Yeah.
Plus, as I said, we only got, I forget it was Thursday or Friday, we only got the shadow study, and we haven't had time to get someone to comment on it. So I don't think we should approve that.
Okay. If that's the case, I'm inclined to say we ought to just skip this whole section right now, rather than approving just the first 2 paragraphs, because the whole thing is kind of one block in terms of what's being added and what's being left out. Is that okay with everybody, or does somebody actually want to push on? Because it is 9 o'clock.
I would say it would be if somebody has comments related to the first 2 paragraphs.
Okay.
It would be helpful.
Okay.
For us to hear those.
Okay. And
just so if we need to come back the next meeting with some.
Okay, that's fine. Does anybody have a concern with the first 2? All right, I'm not seeing anything. I mean, if there's no concern, there's no reason to not consider it approved. So maybe we should leave this as we've approved things with the exceptions we've obviously noted tonight. We've approved this down through line 22 on page 17. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's see if we just have anybody else. I see some hands up. One of them I know is a new one. Meredith and Bruce. Meredith, I don't know if it's new or not. Bruce has not spoken at all tonight. So would you like to, I'm opening this up to you. Bruce?
Bruce, you're unmuted.
Myself. Can I be heard?
Yeah, we can hear you, Bruce.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to comment on which figure is it? Figure 18. Brian Botello mentioned that this was only an example and not necessarily prescriptive. And I think there was just the task force just decided to approve it. I would question whether the task force should approve figure 18 as it currently exists, because to me, I find it, as indicated in the Lemon Road technical note, there are some inconsistencies between that figure and some of the language in the plan. And I think the inconsistencies between the figure and some of the sentences in the text could give rise to some confusion.
Okay. Can you specify what, for example?
Well, it was mentioned in para 13 of the Lemon Road Civic Association note about local streets encouraged to break up larger blocks, provide access to buildings, and improve pedestrian connectivity, allow light to permeate down to the street, reducing the impact of shadows. Building location and massing should minimize long periods of shadow on the street, on adjacent buildings, or an open space. We made the point that we thought that the EYA concept plan that was, I think that was dated last September, in some respects, better reflected those words of the text than Figure 18 does. So I would just like suggest that the task force think again as to whether they really want to approve Figure 18 at this time. Distinguish having it be more consistent with the wording of the text.
All right. Stephanie, since you're representing Lemon Road, I mean, obviously you're familiar with that. How do you feel about this?
Well, I think what Bruce is expressing is what the board discussed, that there's a better illustration than this Figure 18. That, it was the one in the EYA plan or concept from September. I forget if it was 2019 or 2020.
It's in your document, so we can always refer to it.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah. We just think there's a better illustration than this.
Brian, do you have since this has been brought up before, did you look at that? Do you have a reason for wanting this, for preferring this over what Lemon Road had suggested?
Yeah, one is that, we wanted this as an example, and I think putting in kind of the concept plan from the developers might be more indicative of saying this is our expectation of where buildings go. And two, again, this example intends to reflect the building mapping and heights and the urban design recommendations, as well as the urban design concept. And so, some of the ideas expressed in that are these street walls, adjacent to the street walls forming kind of a clear route to the metro rail station and a direct route to the metro rail station. And so that was really what we were trying to express a little more clearly in this example.
All right.
I think the EYA drawing showed a clear route. I think that was isn't a difference between the two. But I don't have it in front of me to look at.
Does it make sense to just defer this? I mean,
Hey, this is Evan Goldman. I'm happy to share the UI plan if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
Brian, you could share our plan. This is obviously not in any way in keeping with what we're planning, so it's hard to see this image in here.
David, this is Christopher.
Christopher.
I would just raise the question of why the example is even necessary. I mean, some might say that by putting it in here, you're already biasing whatever the outcome is going to be by, suggesting that this is the design.
Yeah.
The document, even though it clearly says example of possible implementation. A lot of people, once they see it, they're going to think that's what's going to be expected. Does it serve any purpose to have this?
That's a point. Yeah. Brian, what do you think about that? Is something really lost by taking it out?
I think we can talk about it, and we'll report back to the task force the next meeting.
Okay. All right. That's a good point, Christopher. I appreciate it. All right, let's do that. I certainly don't want to keep everybody here all night trying to figure out how we're going to resolve this. And Bruce, thank you for bringing that up. Do we have anything?
If I can make one last
comment. Please go ahead.
I think that the figure should be retained but improved.
Mm-hmm. And you would improve it by doing what? What would you need to change that would be an improvement to you?
By better reflecting some of the wording in the text.
Okay. Let's why don't you think about it, Brian, and see, and we can between now and then come up with something, either a replacement or just revisit it and vote on it on whether we want to retain it.
Okay, works for me.
Okay. All right, I think, do we have anybody else? I don't think we have any other attendee trying to raise their hands. Is there anybody else on the task force or anybody else who's a participant, a panelist who has anything they want to say at this point. So I guess that adjourns us until, what, about 4 weeks from now or something, right, Brian? Whatever the date is.
That is right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Pull up the date. Yeah, I think we are currently. Sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
Well, I was just, David, I'm just, let's see, we're on page 17 and then we have, how many more pages to go on the 10 more pages, is it?
Yeah. Although a lot of it's strikeout. When we get past, well, let's see, I can't remember where. After about page 22 and a half, it's almost nothing but strikeout, I think. But yes, it's still a long ways to go. So do you feel like an extra meeting, or I'll let you decide what to do?
Well, David, I'm just sort of thinking off the top of my head, it might be useful for us to have an extra meeting so we can get through it all, so that we then have some time to make changes and get something out to you all. I mean, we're trying to do things as we go, but the 2 weeks being in between meetings doesn't leave a, especially lately, hasn't left us a lot of time. And so to me, it'd be helpful to be able to have a meeting so we can get through the rest and have maybe continue some of the hard conversations we've had, or, set us up for some of the harder conversations following that. It feels like, and so I just want to propose maybe having, of course, I haven't talked to literally anyone else about that, but I think I would propose maybe having something a little sooner. And David, if that's something we need to talk about, on Thursday or Friday, we can do that.
Sure, we can talk about it, but we probably ought to at least kind of get a general sense of everybody here, whether they're willing to do that. I realize that we're taking a lot of time and striking this out. I think we couldn't have avoided that one issue tonight, but
we still at the village. We haven't been given enough time. I've been trying to get in contact with shadow people do the shadow studies. They are, it's hard to do it over the weekend. So just, rush, throwing, not giving us enough time is really not fair to us. The next February meeting, if you want to talk about other things, but the next February meeting will still even be a stretch for us. But I don't want to deal with that shadow study before then, because you all had months and we've had a few days.
And Michelle, I think you're looking at not a date later than the 16th. You're looking at a date sooner than the 16th. So we don't wait 4 weeks to talk again. Correct?
Right. I mean, I think, I don't think height would be the only topic we talked about at the next. No. I think that, can be later, but I do feel like there are other things that would be nice to get through before then.
Okay. I mean, I'm amenable to it. Are you thinking of a Tuesday again, or?
I mean, that's been kind of our standard, I guess. We have to make sure we don't personally have other night meetings those nights, but I mean, I think, let's see, the second or possibly the second, if possible.
Well, that makes sense, because that's 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we did this month. We separated them by 2 weeks.
So can we propose the second, and then people can contact us if that is just not going to work?
Okay. Does anybody on the task force know right now that Tuesday the 2nd they would not be available?
We wouldn't be talking about the Virginia Tech Tower.
Not the shadow studies. I know you realize that you said the 16th would be a stretch for you. Yes. I don't think we're talking about that. We're talking about maybe going through the rest of the document, and maybe depending on how much time Brian everything has, we might be able to go back and revisit some of these things, including the language that we might have you consider substituting for your addition to paragraph 3, if that can be done in the next 2 weeks. So, I mean, I'm okay, but I'm not seeing anybody, and I realize people are not necessarily where their calendars are, but I'm not seeing anybody speaking up yet saying they know they can't. So tentatively, let's say the 2nd then. And let everybody know, anybody who thinks they can't do it.
Okay. Thanks.
Right.
I think that'll be helpful overall to at least get through it once, notwithstanding, you know, the issue, the height that we need to solve. And
and we don't want to drag
right.
this out months. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to say? If not, I would say we'll close the meeting. I think we can do that, Brian.
Yep. All right.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate all the comments.
Thank you, everyone. We'll post the recording of the meeting online, and we'll be in touch about the next meeting. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. You too.